Hey everyone, welcome to today's video about NIO stock. And to be honest with you, I think when it comes to NIO, it's very difficult to cover this company. There is so many up and downs, and one week you might have great delivery numbers and the next week you remember that financially this company is not doing that well at all. So it's always a balance of not trying to be too positive like maybe a lot of other YouTubers, like hyping the stock into the stratosphere and every time thinking that this company will 100x in like a year or two, and also not being too negative when it comes to talking about potential bankruptcy of the company. So I find this like the most difficult company to cover because this is such a difficult balancing act. So my way of doing this and looking at NIO, and my honest view of this is to look at the numbers, like the delivery numbers, the promised profitability, how the past quarters have looked, looking at the lithium carbonate price. This time I figured that we look at the lithium carbonate price. There's been a little bit of a change over the past, last month. The price bottomed out at around 60,000. Now it's going up to 78,000. I mean, it's like 30% increase in just over a month and a half. But then again, you zoom out and you'll see that this is like minuscule increase in terms of the long term. It's still like very, very low compared to 2022 and 2023. So let's wait and see if this is just a momentarily like slight uptrend and then stabilizing still below, well below 100,000. That would still not be a whole lot of worry from our companies, in my opinion. Looking at this one, the NIO power data, I don't need to do my own now since this gentleman is doing it every day. And I can see here that the good thing that the daily swap trend is going up, and now we are at around 100,000 already, which is really, really good. Average swaps per station is still hovering around 30, 32 maybe. I would say, again, I always mention this, but I think it's very important to mention this one. NIO has mentioned that 60 is the target, like break even in terms of 60 swaps on average per station. That's the break even target. But that number is like essentially 2.5 years old. And with the scale of the company and with the, as I showed you previously, with the lithium carbonate price going down, the cost of batteries goes down. I would say it's really, really points to the direction that 60 number is, at the very least, in my opinion, in the low 50s, maybe even below 50. It's very difficult to know, but I would for sure say that 60 number is like too high now, just due to the scale of the company and what has happened with the lithium carbonate price. Now, quickly looking at the stock price, which I rarely look at in the terms of my cover videos, but we can see that $4.5 US, almost 9% down on the day, market cap of 10 billion. Now, what does it actually mean? So it means that if you go on the, let's say, last quarter, so last reported quarter was Q1, but again, Q1 was a really bad quarter due to the exceptionally bad delivery numbers. We know that Q2 will be much better. We still haven't got the Q2 earnings release. It's looking like, according to Nasdaq, it's probably around the September of 4th. Still not been announced, but I think like 4th of September or so. So essentially 3 weeks from now, we should have the earnings of NIO. NIO is traditionally, if you're new to this company, very, very, very late to the earnings. Usually they're like almost 1 month ahead of the next up and coming quarter. So they're very late, but looking at the numbers again, we can see that my expectations for Q2 is that it's gonna be probably the best quarter of all time in terms of revenue. But for a company such as NIO, where they have been struggling for so long time in terms of the stock price, I know that a lot of you are disappointed due to the stock market reaction today at around 9% down, especially considering that there's a lot of positive news. And again, over the past couple of months, I've seen that Onvo, especially the L90, is just doing really, really good. And I have to be like, I have never seen a NIO car selling this well. Even you always have this peak in the beginning, the interest is very high. And then by the time, let's say a couple of months in, most people have lost the interest because it is such a competitive market in China. But my feeling is that the L90, obviously the first couple of months is not realistic to have this kind of peak in terms of interest and this kind of queues, as you can see here. This big lorry is just queuing up for supposedly 3 to 5 even kilometers outside the NIO factory just to load up the next deliveries, right? Then you have here, you can see again the same kind of stuff, that NIO reportedly receives 10k orders in the last week. Then we have here that NIO L90 supposedly outsells Li Auto's L9, L8 and L7. So when it comes to the Onvo sub-brand, let's not forget that they still have the other one, the L60, right? And then the L80 will also start to be, selling quite well, supposedly. It's gonna look really, really good for NIO. I mean, especially for Onvo. Now, one bad negative side to that is that the more Onvo they sell, probably the fewer NIO classic cars, like the highest average sales price car, the traditional NIO cars, your ET7s, your ET5s, those won't be sold as much because people are probably satisfied with the quality of Onvo. So I would say there's, to some degree, some cannibalization, but at the very least, I mean, I'm very happy to see that according to my estimates, based on the week 31 number deliveries and week 32 number, my average is that they have around 9,500 to 9,600 deliveries on the first 7 working days of this month, of August of 2025. So in August, we'll have 22 working days, 7 of them are gone. I assume that based on week 32 and some of these, like 7,930 in the previous week 31, 2 of those days were on this side of the month and 3 of those were on the other side of that month. So I would assume those two combined around 9,600, and this puts me actually at a delivery in excess of around 31,000 already for August. And how is that looking on the graph? So you can see that I was a little bit disappointed this year, especially like starting from April and onwards. I had expected, like if you look at my own numbers here, previously I expected April to be like 8,000 higher than what they actually got. I expected May to be also 8,000 higher. I expected June to be 10,000 higher, and July was really disappointing with like 21,000. It's not like super bad for NIO to deliver at least 23 to 25,000, but it's not great, I would say. So I was a little bit disappointed with those delivery numbers. But looking at this graph here, you can see on the grade bars, which are 2025, the blue 24, you can see that I'm actually sticking by that 32,000. Now, 32 might be a tad bit too optimistic. I mean, it could actually be even more, but let's say like most realistically, they'll be around 30,000. And then there's a span of 30,000 plus, in the best case scenario, absolutely, if everything goes well, like maybe 34,000, maybe 33,500, I would say. But let's stick with 32,000. Slightly too optimistic, most realistically closer to 30,000. And how will that look like in terms of, let's say, monthly deliveries, right? So looking at Q3 is then your July delivery numbers, your June delivery numbers, your July and August. How would that look like in terms of the Q3 delivery numbers, right? We can see that Q3 would be July, August, and September. And combining those numbers, I would say it's going to be at around 90,000 deliveries. And 90,000 will yet again be their best ever delivery in terms of their history, right? And how is that looking like based on the stock price and the market capitalization of the company? As I mentioned earlier, like 10 billion market cap, that's all we care about, right? The company is essentially valued at around 10 billion. So going to my expected Q3 earnings, we can see that my numbers previously was based on 100,000 deliveries. We need to lower that down now. I would say like 110,000 is really, really tough ask. So let's reduce that to, let's go to 90, I don't know, let's say 92,000, right? So let's leave a little bit of a surprise. Okay, so 93,000, you can already see that the revenue went from 3.7 billion to 3.2, but still really good numbers, right? I would say that that's gonna be a little bit, more difficult to reach profitability with that 90,000 delivery. I mean, at 92,000, at 110,000, you can see that the net loss was supposed to be around 500 million. You can see that on row 30. Let me zoom in for you so you can see. Whereas if we now go fast forward a little bit, you can see that when I change that number to 92,000, if I don't change anything else, it's gonna be at around 600 million net loss. Now, let's leave another 100 million in savings on total operating expenditure. Let's say that they actually cut down on R&D expenses from 475, to 375, right? And they don't even increase the SG&A. I mean, let's say they decrease the SG&A by 50 million. So save 100 million on R&D, 50 million on SG&A, which is maybe a bit unrealistic. But in that scenario, NIO would probably make a net loss of around 450 million. Now, then we are talking about significant improvement. And then for Q3 is going to be interesting. if they manage to deliver almost 40,000 on average in Q3, maybe 145,000 is again a little bit too optimistic. If we change that number to 125, which still will be like 30,000 or so more than the already best Q3 of all time that they supposedly gonna have soon, that would leave us at around 4 billion in revenue. And then, with the same thinking, I mean, let's say that the operating expenses wouldn't increase based on that number that I mentioned before. Let's change this to 375 so we can see that in the table. And obviously let's go with 630, so that's 100 million saving, and we keep that same. Let's go with 375 in Q4, and let's go with 680 on the SG&A. That would leave us as a net income of maybe, or in this case, net loss of around 160 million. Let's say between 100 to 250 million, right? I would be really happy. I mean, if NIO shows around 450 million in Q3 and in Q4 around 150 million net loss, or even 250, that's a complete different ball game, despite them even still having low cash. I mean, if people are talking about bankruptcy, I think this is potentially a little bit nonsensical. I don't agree with that. I understand that this is all hanging upon the fact that they need to deliver these kind of numbers, right? We don't have any more time left for any missteps here. Like, that time is so, gone now. They had so much money. Like, if you go back, look at the cash position that they had just in, Q4 of 2023, 8 billion also. That number is now down to 2 billion. By this run rate of Q4, it's going to be around 2 billion or so cash on hands. And if they have any more missteps, and if the net loss, in Q3 and Q4 are not 400 and 150, and if they come in at around 600 and 500, the cash position will be around 1.5 billion. And then I understand the likes of this gentleman here on Twitter that, you might be a little bit, cautious about spending money on this company. And that, my friends, I believe is the reason why the stock is still having a few of these days. Because a few people are still seeing that there is a lot of risk. Like, this company does not have a whole lot of money on hands, right? There is a lot of risk of, I still say bankruptcy is just not possible at this stage. In the worst case scenario, they're going to dilute the share. And since the market cap is so low for them, in order to raise like even 3 billion or so, they would need to dilute and destroy the shareholder value, right? That's the reality of this kind of deals when they raise more shares. So in my opinion, that is the reason why we still see the stocks stuck around these kind of very, very low levels. But give it a couple of more months. Let's see, how August, September, and October turns out. If the delivery numbers get close to 35, even maybe potentially pushing the 40,000, and we get the solid improvement in, let's say, guidance of Q3 already on the 4th of September. Remember, the 4th of September, we will have the Q2 earnings. And on the Q2 earnings, it's not going to be, I would say, maybe 600 to 700 million net loss, right? That's my expectations for, let's say, according to my own numbers, we can say 700 or so, which is significant improvement compared to Q1 at 900 or so million net loss. So I would say that if they give a good guidance on the net loss on Q2 numbers in 3 weeks from now is not excess of 750, 780 million, I would still say just hold your horses. You've been in NIO for, 4 years. At the very minimum, most of you, minimum 2 years. A lot of us in excess of 4 or 5 years, right? I think in this up and coming 6 months, the future of this company will be decided. They cannot afford any more missteps. It's now or never. They have to continue to do these kind of improvements. And there are some really great positives. And the best positive right now is the L90, but another positive obviously is the lithium carbonate price, which helps them with the swap infrastructure and just taking down the cost. We also see that the battery swap infrastructure is finally starting to get some momentum. They're averaging around 100,000 or so. We have also seen on their earnings that the company is actually making a lot of money on the other sales. On this graph here, you can see again the cost of other sales in the white. And you can see in the blue one, the actual revenue from the other sales. And the cost of other sales most of the time has been higher than the revenue from the other sales. But over the past couple of quarters, we had one quarter in Q4 of last year where they actually were making more money than losing more money on other sales. And then it kind of went back to the normal, but with such a small margin. You can see, actually I plotted the delta in the green for you so you can see, and the delta is hovering around, so they're essentially break even, right, basically. So I would say they're getting some quite scalability to the business, and the other sales business will start to make not a whole lot of money, but at least it will go from being a burden to actually making money for the company. So potentially, I mean, there's a scenario here that they actually fulfill all of these like promises. They actually come in with really nice improvement on net loss in Q3 and in Q4 of this year. They don't even need to become profitable, but since the management is really touting that profitability by Q4, at least for one single quarter, I guess let's hope that they do that, but I wouldn't be too surprised if they don't. I still say like even a couple of 100 million net loss is such a significant improvement for this company, right? And if they continue then to scale up from there, and if Onvo for real is finally the car brand that they really needed, and they start to sell like multiple tens of thousands only from Onvo every single month, and next year we have like, I don't know, Q1 of 135,000, and by end of next year they do like 165,000 every single quarter, then I would tell you like this company is super undervalued. But I would say that if you really force me to decide, I would say that I'm trying to be positive. I'm hoping that this is the truth, and I think that if I have to pick one side, I would pick the the bullish side, because I think like the worst is past us. It's been 4 really difficult years, but if I have to pick like one side, just based on like essentially taking a leap of faith, I would say that this company will survive, and next year they're gonna do potentially 150,000 every single quarter, right? Then this company could be valued at the very least 3 times from here, in my opinion, like 30 billion, 40 billion US dollar at the very least, right? But then everything hangs on these up and coming 2 quarters. So anyways, this was a very long video, but yeah, please share your ideas in the comment section. Do you think I'm fair with my assessment on NIO? And let me know if there's anything I can improve on, and thank you for your time, and see you in the next